this so people can watch it back afterwards. Great. So let's go on to the first slide, Nicola, please. Yeah. So this comes kind of hot off the press of our digital strategy being published a couple of weeks ago, and that strategy signals a real intent to make Birmingham a leading authority when it comes to digital services. It's available on our website, and I'm going to show you a short video on the strategy in a bit. But just wanted to, before we get into this, touch on that word digital for a minute, because I suspect it probably means different things to different people. So what is digital? Well, we think of it as not being a thing. It's more a way of being. It's a way of thinking and a way of doing and a way of working more than it is about technology. It is about technology, but as we know probably from bitter experience, if we do implement technology in the wrong way, that doesn't help any of us, doesn't help us, it doesn't help our customers. And actually, what's there on the right hand side is a nice definition by a co-founder of the government digital service, a chap called Tom Loosemore, who described digital as being about applying the culture, processes and technologies of the internet era to respond to people's raised expectations. There's quite a lot in that definition when you start to unpack it, but notice that technology is only one word out of 18, and a really important message from the definition is the acceptance that the internet era has fundamentally changed how people view and use technology and what level of service they expect from their service provider. Everybody wants services to run as smoothly as Airbnb does or Amazon services do, and so on. And it means we really need to understand customers and provide them with services in the way they expect them these days. And if we don't do that, we'll continuously disappoint them. And that's really the point of this session, is about what we need to do to, what does being digital mean? And we're just going to show you a short video next of the digital strategy, rather than playing the whole thing, rather than talking about the strategy for this session, because you can go and read the strategy, it's on our website, but we'll just have a watch of this for a couple of minutes. Thanks, Nicola. Great. So I hope it gives you a flavour. In fact, talking of digital skills and leadership, that was actually, that video was put together by our AD and CIO. So you know, kind of really leading the way there in good use of digital. So I would encourage you to have a read of the full strategy. It's purposefully not very long, quite an easy read. For the purposes of the session today, I wanted to focus on one of the really important themes here, which is about building the council's data and digital skills. So for me, digital transformation has to start with people. If we don't have people who have the skills to make it happen, it won't happen. And equally, if we don't have people who understand and adopt the behaviours needed to make it happen, it won't happen either. So my view is that this theme is possibly the most important one because it underpins and enables all of the others. Yes, we have fabulous aspirations in our, say our customer strategy, our data strategy, our early intervention and prevention strategy. But if we go about designing and delivering those in the wrong way, they will fail, or at least they'll fail to achieve their potential. So priority one is really key. That's about getting our leaders bought in. And this isn't about patronising, undermining our leaders at all. They have amazing visions, aspirations, and some of them already think in that digital way. It's about helping them to understand how to get the best from the rest of us in making the changes we need to make. It's about encouraging them to promote behaviours like trust and openness and collaboration. And it's about allowing us as the people who are going to deliver those the services and the transformation to fail from time to time. As long as we do that quickly and we learn from it, that's all part of digital. So we're going to be spending a lot of time with directors and ADs alongside our HR and OD colleagues to help them to provide that atmosphere for success within the council. Priority two is about building our own teams in IT and D so that we've got more of those digital skills we need to be successful. It also involves the wider organisation. So there was quite an interesting recent Gartner poll which suggested that a significant percentage of technical capability in organisations in general and skills lie outside the traditional IT service, which probably means many of you have an interest in digital and technology in some way. And we need to embrace and harness that in BCC, because working collaboratively with those with all of you and other people who are digital natives and interested people will surely be a very strong combination. Priority three is just about getting on with it, and that's what we're doing. So we're already delivering some amazing products using agile and digital approaches. As you'd appreciate, there's nothing like learning from doing, and also nothing quite like demonstrating the value of doing something by actually doing it and showing what you've done. And our data, customer and field worker projects are great examples of this. So we're going to be hearing actually shortly from some of the people who are building their digital skills on those programs. And lastly, priority four is about talking about what we're doing. So we haven't been great at this as a council over the years, talking about the successes and so on. We've now got a blog site where we talk about the projects we're working on, some of the projects we just mentioned actually. It also talks about the digital strategy and how we went about developing that. And it's got some random musings from me and others about how we're developing digital within Birmingham. You may have seen or been to one of the data program show and tells. That's another way we're using this sort of open, working in the open to get the word out. So we do those monthly, and they're open for anyone to attend. So I encourage you to come along to those. And it's really about spreading the word about what we're doing and helping people to learn along the way. And this Lunch and Learn, of course, is an example of that. So we know that becoming digital requires a big culture shift. But we know that we feel that these are the four priorities that if we give these some real focus, that change will happen. Next slide, please, Nicola. So forgive me while I dive into a little bit of detail actually around around some digital principles. We're going to hear from a couple of team members who've been living and breathing these principles on some of our programs, and they can share some first-hand experience of the power of adopting digital ways of working. But I'm just going to talk through some of these. I might go through all of them. I think we've got time. So these are some principles which the Government Digital Service developed a number of years ago now. But they've stood firm for many years, and they're still really good principles. And these are the sorts of things that we need to all remember when we're thinking about how we design services and how we treat customers. So the first one's around starting with user needs. That sounds like a really obvious thing, but a lot of the time organizations feel that they understand their users and they don't need to ask their users. This is around the GDS principle says, you are not your user. Go and ask your user what they need, what they currently feel about services, and start to design it that way. Do less is about saying, actually, sometimes it's about the things that you don't do that's as important as the things that you do. So by, if we try and do 10 things, we might not deliver them all that well. If we focus on the one thing that's going to get the most value to a customer, then we're much more likely to do that better. So doing less sometimes is more important. And the same can be said for things like internet content. Actually, sometimes less is more. Third one is around designing with data. And that's about saying, you'll have heard about the early intervention and prevention program. That's really about designing services with data. So understanding what the issues of our city, the issues of our customers are, and designing services which meet those needs. So it's about not making assumptions. It's about working with empirical information to be able to design services in better ways. Do the difficult and complicated hard work to make it simple. So for me, this is about us as an organization working really hard to make sure services are simple for our customers. So they may not appreciate when we use something like Airbnb, we don't necessarily appreciate the amount of work that's gone on behind the scenes to make that model work in such a way that the interface that we see is so simple. And that's what we need to do. We need to work really hard to make it simple for our customers. And then iterate, and so on, and then again, is another really important principle. And this is that we never stop refining products. We shouldn't do services. So we shouldn't just put a service in place and then assume that we never touch it again. This is about it's about delivering layers of value all the time and iterating as customers' needs change, as the city's needs change, and so on. So that's another really important one. This is for one and actually everyone. So the point here is, let's design services for everyone. Let's not design services which 80% of us can access, but it's not accessible for people with certain disabilities or something like that. Let's design services around everybody. Understanding context, similar to that last one, but this is about not every. There are some fairly similar themes here. The one around be consistent, not uniform, is another similar one whereby not everybody's the same. Not everybody needs exactly the same service. So let's be consistent in our language, in our messaging, and so on. But we don't necessarily need to be uniform. But we do need to understand context when we're building services. Building digital services, not websites. That's important. Our digital services might be provided through websites, but they're not necessarily seen as websites. So we need to be designing end-to-end digital services which make sense and which follow the user journey, which is important to people. And make things open. It makes things better. So that's part and parcel of what we're doing here. Really, we're talking openly about what we're doing. We're talking about the fact that we have a level of immaturity around digital at the moment, and that we're acknowledging that, and we're saying we need to make that. We need to improve that, and I think sometimes acknowledging these things is a great start in terms of making the change. So always talk about things, whatever you're doing, talk about them. That's why we do show and tells and that sort of thing. So some really good definitions there that just to bear in mind as we get into the next stage, next session of this show and tell. So and if we go on to the next slide, Nicola, please. I'm going to bring in some people who've been involved in some of our digital programs now, and we're going to talk about some of the important roles that we have in digital teams. So the first project we're going to talk about is the Field Worker project. Now, many of you probably know about this, and we have done show and tells on the Field Worker project as well. And it's basically we're creating a platform for field workers for any field worker ultimately in BCC to be able to access their line of business systems and to download information and send information back to business systems without necessarily being connected all the time. It has lots of other great features on there around safety and so on. One of which is risk marker, I just put this little image on the right hand side because it might be interesting to start to think when we talk about there being technologists out in the business areas. You might recognize yourselves and other people might recognize themselves in this description. So we have this important role called product owner, and the product owner effectively sets the vision for the digital product. They manage what we call the product roadmap. So the product doesn't just become a product at a point in time and then nothing happens with it. It becomes a small product and then often grows, and there's a roadmap to that growth. And the product owner owns that piece. And they prioritize what we call the user story. So when I talked about we do user research to understand user journeys and user need. They turn into user stories, and the product owner owns the importance and the prioritization of those user stories. And they use data to understand how the product's being used and how it can be improved and so on. So I'm delighted to say we've got one of our product owners with us today, and that is Simon. Are you okay to put your camera on, Simon? Say hello.
Yeah, of course, James.
Thank you. Well, welcome. So, Simon, you've played a really key role as product owner for the Fieldworker platform risk marker component. How did you get involved in that?
I was approached and asked by the team to support and be product owner, which made me, quite nervous as to what that would mean. But as the head of occupational health and safety, I understand how important it is to ensure that there are sort of central mechanisms in place where there's been like a widespread organisational risk being identified. And I started the council over 10 years back, and it was something, this particular area, risk marker, was being talked about then, and the issues we had with it. It's taken an awfully long time for us to get to a point whereby we're solving the problem, and that's exactly what the team have done in a very short space of time. I was also sort of galvanised in my commitment to supporting it by the recent Brent Council prosecution. So yeah, I was approached and saw where it fitted in for me, and agreed to support.
Brilliant. And can you describe what your role's been on the project?
Yeah, so I do a number of things, I think. I mean, probably making teas and coffees. I support the decision-making process, and I've got the product functionality in mind. James, as you know, I'm a non-technical person. I would not describe myself as a digital native. And I think that's good in the fact that it allows me to keep an eye on what the end product needs to be from a user viewpoint. And I saw a comment there in the chat about people that might not be as au fait with this kind of stuff. So I think that was really important. But I think with my own specialism, I understand the law associated to health and safety, and I know that we've got this general duty, which is so far as is reasonably practicable. And it was about making sure that we achieve that in this particular area to the best of our ability. So, keeping it on track, keeping the outcomes in mind, which, the group were all very good at doing as well. But I think that was probably my role. Others involved may have a different view.
No, I've always heard very good things, Simon, about how you and the team work together. So, so I think just to describe how the product owner and the team work together, you effectively got the product owner who's responsible for the what we're going to build, and then the delivery team, the delivery manager, is responsible for the how we go about building it. And that's a really key relationship between Simon and Helen, who's the delivery manager. So Simon always kind of keeps Helen on her toes in terms of what needs to be delivered to effectively get to that outcome that we need for customers. Say again?
I said it's the other way around. Helen keeps me on my toes.
I'm sure it's a bit of both. So yeah, how have you found the role, Simon, and how has it felt kind of different to other projects you've been involved in?
I think in honesty, it's been really exciting. I feel like I'm working with a group of highly talented people with competencies very different to my own, and I think that's been really energizing, to be honest. I think it's been really good to be able to influence the design of something and to constantly be reshaping something. How's it been different? I think the methodology has been very well defined. I think that's probably the thing that struck me the most is that there's clear periods of doing certain things, you know, and that's been very well stage managed by the team. The pace has been quite fast. It's felt quite organic because we've had to problem solve as we've gone through. And I have to say that I think that it has helped to reshape the thinking around organisational risk in a way that we haven't done before. So it's been very good to have a very different perspective as to what we're trying to solve. And I think, you know, I saw it on your presentation, just the shared thing I think we've got is, and what I find with the team is apparent every day working with them, is the evidence-based decision making. You know, that's at the fore of everything that we do in that, and I think the team buy into it really well. And overall, James, I've been really impressed with the team. You know, they've got a can-do attitude, and yeah, it's been an honour to be involved in it.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Simon. Yeah, I think you touched on an important point there about keeping that evidence base and keeping coming back to the customer, the user need, and actually it's not something that you do once at the beginning of the project and that sort of defines you for the next 6 months, 6 months delivery or whatever. Constantly going back, aren't you, and just assessing that actually this is still delivering what the user needs, isn't it, and then tweaking as we go.
Yeah. So yeah, uncharted territory, and yeah, I think we're going to have something brilliant. And it's probably worth saying to those that don't know that we're developing something that other local authorities are going to be interested in, because it is really groundbreaking, and there's nothing like this that's been out there before. So well done to the team, you know, for being able to do it.
Thanks so much for coming on, Simon.
That's an absolute pleasure, James. Happy to support.
Cheers, thank you. And we're going to talk to another member of a different team now. So if we could move on. Thank you, Nicolette. So yeah, the next role we're going to talk about, and we're going to talk to Sarita, who's going to pop her camera on. Hi, Sarita. So Sarita's a user researcher on the customer program, and the customer program is. I mean, I'm sure you'll have heard about the customer program because Peter Bishop did a council-wide webinar on this 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was very widely attended, so I'm sure many of you heard about this. But yeah, this is about creating services that are designed around the needs of users, simplified access to online digital services to ensure fully accessible services across a range of devices. Services are joined up end to end, and we're also working on enhancing the Brum account, which, by the way, through our digital strategy user research, we got very good feedback around the Brum account, but the people like to use it. Also got some really good insight on how we could make that better. And so some of the things that a user researcher does, this is very often one of the first roles on a digital project. But then, you know, if it's a well-run digital project, should also then run throughout the project, as I've just said at the end of Simon's session. And the user researcher does things like, as it says in the little praise here, develops a research plan with clear objectives. So we don't just go out and have random conversations with people. We're very clear about what it is we're trying to understand. We recruit end users for specific research requirements, and yeah, that's quite a job in itself. Actually, is finding people to talk to and the right people to talk to, and people with all the right kind of demographics that we need to meet to make sure that we're representative across our city. And then running workshops and usability sessions to get information from people, and then importantly crafting personas and journey maps. So these are things which talk about, well, in fact, this is a persona. This what we've got here on the right hand side is an example of a persona, and the sorts of things that they'd be, you know, that if you recognize some of these attributes in yourself, you might be a good user researcher. You know, just be a real curiosity about people and about products and services, ability to listen, present data, ability to structure questions and connect with people, and yeah, that overwhelming, that curiosity is the overwhelmingly big factor for this kind of role. So Sarita, nice to have you with us. So you've recently taken on the user research role in the customer program, haven't you? And user research is not your day job, I believe. So wondering what attracted you to it, and what is the role that you've been doing and how you found it?
Yep. So yeah, you're right. It's not my day job, James. I have sort of done user research in the past, and sort of many years ago, working with communities and organisations through previous work. But in terms of using, proper techniques and documentation, as we have done in the customer service programme, we've not done that. Basically, I put myself forward to undertake this role just for my own learning and to try something a little bit different. So the program, I guess, was similar to other projects, struggling in terms of UR capacity. So I stepped in essentially to kind of sort of temporarily support the user research piece. So in terms of skills that I felt that I had, like I said, I've worked with organisations and citizens from different communities and age groups. I feel like I'm a good listener and able to speak to people about experiences objectively without bias. So I think that's a really good quality that you'd need to have. In terms of the team itself, it was, a fairly small team. Myself and Nathan, who's a BA, actually, we took the capacity of a user researcher. So what we've been doing is working to sort of 1 week long sprints. So essentially we've done an as-is review of a service function. So this sort of formed part of what you've mentioned previously is the discovery phase. And it's been really interesting to work as part of an agile and scrum team. So we've had, sprint planning sessions in terms of, who's doing what and, how we're going to do it. And then retrospectives, which are basically, coming together and talking about things, that worked really well, things that could have worked better, and discuss, sort of next steps and actions. So I think it's been really good to learn the method of user research and preparing for, how we go about doing things. I helped create the research plans, which basically include, the how, we're going to achieve our sprint goal. This is basically broken down into, how we're going to essentially define the user journey and the user experiences of people accessing different services end to end. So we essentially interviewed users such as staff, citizens and businesses. And then from these, what we sort of did also was created discussion guides, which is essentially a script which is adapted to each of those groups to just basically try and tease out and find out, how they find the service, any issues that they faced and things that we do, well as well, and also things that we can improve on. So I think the real sort of hard work was really in the analysis side of things and analysing the interviews, sort of re-teasing out the common themes and the experiences and then translating those and then mapping those into the end-to-end and basically seeing, where we can make recommendations and, to maybe simplify processes. So I won't lie, it has been hard work, but equally it's been really satisfying to kind of begin to see where the insights are emerging and how we can look to make changes to the way that we design services. So it's been really good to learn from others, and we've had some really good user research coaches that have been supporting on that element as well. And it's been a really good team. Much like Simon, everyone's kind of just mucked in, and we've had a job to do, and within a certain amount of time, where we've kind of just gone in and done it. So I think the work's really given me a real good insight into a different area of the business. Something that I a service that I've never worked in before, how it operates and how it's viewed externally as well. So it's been good to understand what the users actually need, rather than us kind of going in and defining what we think that they need, because we're all different and interpret things our own way, aren't we?
Indeed. And one thing that you said there is, I'm just going to touch on that as well, actually, which is about, this isn't, as you said right at the beginning, this isn't your day job, and you talked about the team mucking in together, and that's quite a common feature of an important feature, and Simon mentioned it as well, important feature of agile delivery, which is that rather than in traditional delivery, we often find that each person has a very specific role to play in a project. With agile teams, we tend to have what we call T-shaped roles. So this is people who have their own specialism for sure, but they also have a knowledge of the other, sort of thinner knowledge, albeit, of the other roles within the team. So Sarita has a knowledge of user research, so she's been able to help out the team with the user research capability, and similarly, other people within that team will have knowledge of other elements of that team. So it really helps with capacity. When you're delivering, it means that you don't have to put an enormous team together to be able to get something quite big done, because you share the workload across a number of people who are multidisciplinary. So that was great, Sarita. And so I know sometimes when you do user research, you kind of come across things which are real like gold nuggets, that will massively help the solution design, or tell you things that you really didn't know about the user before you had that conversation. Have you got any examples like that you could share?
Yeah, so I guess all users are different. We all have different experiences accessing, different services. I think it's important to have that breakdown and understand that sort of start to finish of what that person's journey looks like. So let's say, going online, I'd have a completely different experience to, going online and purchasing something to what you would have. So I think working in this way, it's really about designing a service that best suits, that gives the best possible outcome for its users. So no matter who they are, what their needs are, what their accessibility needs are, and actually, like you say, we might uncover things that we don't know existed before. And actually, if we don't ask those questions, we're never going to know. So I guess in terms of what we found as part of the work that we carried out, I mean, there's a number of things that have come to light that we can support our staff on to offer its users, I guess, a more sort of streamlined service. It is a very sort of paper-heavy department, and I guess this is one of the issues and pain points that sort of identified from its users. And there's a lot of repetition in terms of forms, and forms aren't accessible. So recommendations that we make to the service owners will include, how they can operate a little better. And, the next phase of the work that we're going to be carrying out is going to include that. And we'll be working directly with those service teams on how we can do things better, and what sort of solution fits best with the team and and dependent on, the outcome that it wants to achieve as well. So all based on, sort of feedback from the users and the information that we found. So that's a piece of work that's taking place at the moment. And we're actually going to be holding a show and tell on the 26th of April as well. So just letting everybody know here that, please do join us for that. So we'll go into a little bit more detail in terms of what the delivery teams have been working on through that discovery phase, and also what the outcomes were and what the next steps are. So we'll get some comms sent out on that in due course.
Brilliant. Really interesting stuff. Thanks, Sarita.
Thanks, James.
Terrific. Right, so let's go on to the next slide, which I think is the last one, and then we've got some time for questions. So I just wanted to bring to your attention what we're doing around community of practice. So community of practice is basically it's a way of building and sharing knowledge on a particular topic or skill, as it says on the slide. And you can build a community of practice around anything effectively. Now, some authorities who are very mature in their digital capabilities have very specific communities of practice in some cases. So what Sarita talked about, their user research, you might find that there's a number of user researchers and they have a user research community of practice, and they keep themselves up to speed with examples of things they've done and problem solving and things like that. We, because we're starting a little bit further back from that at the moment, we've launched our own community of practice, and it's just a general digital community of practice, and it's aimed at anybody interested in digital. So if you're working on a digital project at the moment, or if you just have a plain old interest in digital, it's an opportunity to come along and have a listen or have a say if you want to. So yeah, we want to use them to share good practice, talk about tools that we're using, things we've learned as we've gone along the way, like Sarita's just talked us through, basically things that will help us to get better. We have had some guest speakers on some of our communities of practice so far, so people from some local authorities and central government as well, who who are real experts in some of the disciplines within digital teams. So that's been really interesting. And yeah, it's open to anybody. Just some examples of things that we've talked about in the past. What's digital? You know, we had a professor of digital from Plymouth University talking to us about. He talked about business models and actually how the next step in digital transformation is to move from transforming existing services to completely rethinking council services along the lines of like disruptors like Airbnb and Uber and others that we've talked about. Now that seems a long way off, but that's the sort of future he was painting for us. And we talked about the role of user research. We've had some experts in talking about how user research works and how to do it well, and some of the learnings we've had from it. I had a really well attended one last week on robotics. And then we've got some great ones coming up. So we talked. Simon talked about his role as product owner. We've got a whole session devoted to the role of product owner. I think that's really pertinent to colleagues on the call here. Really, you know, we will find that whilst we in IT&D will do a lot of the delivery of digital services, the role of product owner will often sit in the business areas, because you're the people who are closest to the customers. You understand the customers the most. You understand what those digital services need to look like to support the customer. And we're going to have a session on how to do good service design, one on building better products faster, and then basically we're going to have a number of open sessions where you log in. We'll take 5 minutes for people to kind of log the sort of things they want to talk about, discussion topics. We'll do some voting, and then we'll pick the top 2 or 3 to discuss, and we'll have an open discussion for an hour. So it's every couple of weeks. It's an hour long. We tend to do it over lunchtime, so it doesn't disrupt the working day too much. And yeah, I really would encourage you to come along. If you're interested in that, please just put kind of I'm in or yes please or something like that in the message in the chat, and we'll make sure you're included. So that brings us to the end of the actual Lunch and Learn presentation as such. What I will do is, just before we open up the floor for questions, I'll just go back and make sure we've answered the ones that are in the chat. So the first one is from Peter. Peter says, I'm sure you got this covered, but how do you intend to cater for the 6.3% of adults who have never used the internet? We still need to use the old-fashioned methods of communication. Absolutely, Peter. Wouldn't disagree with you one bit there, and that's why, you know, I was very clear when I first you know, at the beginning of the presentation around digital is not necessarily about technology, and actually we need to engage with those 6.3% of people just as we do with, you know, I get my maths right, 93.7% of the people, and so that's very much that point around designing for everyone, not just some of the people. So yeah, I totally agree with that one. Regina says 2 things. First, I've been told by citizens that a lot of applications are now online, but there is no one to contact if there's a problem. Yes, you can send an email, but responses are not coming through in a timely manner. So secondly, if they call the BCC general telephone number, people have to wait 40 to 50 minutes before anyone replies, and then they may get put through to the wrong department. Is the digital strategy addressing these issues? This is absolutely something we are aware of. This came through our user research as part of the digital strategy, and I would be very surprised if that therefore is not being picked up by the customer program. Perhaps if there's a colleague, anyone from the customer program who can expand on that, brilliant. But if not, I'll make sure that your comment gets pushed into customer program just to make sure it is being addressed. So thank you for that comment. And next one is, during the discovery phase, are we going to look at integration of systems alongside the IT and digital review, i.e. housing repairs, social services, call centre, etc.? There are gaps that impact the customer journey, and how do we ensure all bases are touched during the review? So, I mean, I'll have a go at that one. I think there's a number of things there. If we do the user research and the discovery phase right, we would always pick those things up because we're talking about user journeys. So if the user needs to start with the website, but then there needs to be information pulled, or they need to push out to housing repairs system or whatever like that, that will be very much picked up in the user journey that we would map out. And we'd be mapping out the as is and then the to be, and actually we would, if there are gaps, we would identify that in that mapping process. The other thing I would say is that in IT and digital we have a process called the front door process, where all requests for projects and so on come through the front door, and at that point we get to see them all, and we get to almost triage them, if you like. So one of the things we'll be saying is, does this align? Does this request here, might be something to do with social services or housing repairs, does it align in any way to any of the existing programs that we've got underway? And even in the last few weeks, we've had a number of those things through where we've just pointed them into the customer program, because there are very clear links there, and we don't want to miss those links. So we're doing what we can. I'd say there's the corporate PMO, the corporate program management office, also have a dependency management process where things like that would get picked up if we're looking like we're going to miss a key connection somewhere. So I hope that helps answer that one, Sadia. And we've all got lots of people saying in. That's great. Thanks, Simon. If you need to go, that's fine. So just let me open up the floor to anybody else who hasn't. If you haven't popped a question in the chat, feel free to stick your hand up, and we'll come to you one by one. There's no problem if there are no questions. If you think of anything else, pop it in the chat afterwards. Drop me a line on Teams or whatever if you want to know more. But yeah, if you please do come along to these sessions. The people who have put your name, said yes please, we'll make sure we get you included. And thank you very much for giving up your lunch time, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye now.
Thanks all. Thanks, James.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much. That was really good.
Thank you.
Quite an eye opener.